Hey everybody, it is Wednesday morning and we are going to take a little trip around the world. I just got the lights turned on about 10 minutes ago, and in fact my downward facing floodlight right there was still on. I forgot to come in here last night and actually turn it off, so my waterfall tank here had a little bit of extra moonlight all night last night. So that happens once in a while. I turn all the lights off in the room except for that one light. It gives it a nice sort of nighttime glow, and then from time to time I will forget to come back downstairs and turn that one off, and that's what I did last night. So that light's been on all night. No big deal there. Unfortunately, there are some people out there that leave their aquarium lights on all the time, and they use the aquarium like some sort of night light or something. I do not recommend doing that. Fish do have a circadian rhythm, and they do need to have day-night cycles, or it messes with their physiology. Plants, you can just put light on them all the time unless you're trying to do something specific with flowering them or regulating their growth cycle or something like that. But plants aren't going to get messed up by having light on them all the time like that. And then, of course, in this case, the fish aren't going to be bothered by it happening from time to time either. No big deal. In fact, there have been times where I've forgotten to turn all the lights off in the fish room and left the... I've just come down in the morning and it was already lit. So they just got a really, really long day that day. So anyway, just thought it would be a good time to do a little impromptu trip around the world. We're all going to be looking at the tanks pretty much at the same time together this morning. My foot tank here doesn't need too much work. This tank never does. I just leave it alone. I've got a deep sand bed in it, and it seems to just kind of take care of itself. I just top it off when it needs to be, and every once in a while I'll do a little bit of water change and we'll go from there. But right now I need to get in there and remove all of this floating duckweed. I know I've got a bunch of little baby guppies swimming around in there. I've seen them when I look in the top. You can see one small one right there, but I've seen some really small baby ones in there swimming around. My cherry barb, as far as I know, the other day I saw it in there still swimming around, so I know my cherry barb's doing okay. And it probably is about time to get in there and top this tank off. I usually keep the water level up to about here, and so you can see how low it actually is at the moment. But you can also see that deep sand bed on this end of it, gravel at the bottom. And then I've got holes drilled in the front of this plexiglass that sort of divides and holds the sand back on this side. And so water does actually pass through this medium here. And I believe because of that, I get the denitrification in this tank. And I rarely have anything over like a few parts per million nitrates in this tank, no matter how much I seem to neglect it. So that's the only thing I can figure is I did sort of inadvertently set up a tank with a deep sand bed, and I get some denitrification going on. But as far as that tank goes, we just need to clear it out, get some plants out of there, and have a look at what's going on with the fish on the inside. As far as this tank is going, I do want to talk about the plants that I put in here recently, and specifically I want to talk about this one. I've been calling it a species of milfoil, but I'm not sure if that's actually what it is. And I've been looking up, I got some more information about whether or not that's actually milfoil or possibly actually is green cobamba, which is what I thought it was when I first saw it. So I don't know, but we will be talking about that more in an upcoming video. I don't want to get all bogged down talking about plants when we're supposed to be just kind of cruising over each and every tank and having a generalized look at them. Plants are doing well in here. Haven't seen any more outbreaks of aphids. We did find some aphids on one of our Christmas cactus upstairs. Actually has some flower buds on it, and one of the buds was covered in aphids, so I rushed that outside and got it sprayed down, and I didn't see any aphids on anything else upstairs, and so far I haven't seen any more aphids on anything down here. But I have fought aphids in this tank many times, so I'm happy to say that now is not one of them. My bird's nest fern over there is just doing fantastic. You can't even see that it's in a planter anymore, but that's still sitting in the original planter I brought it home in. It's basically just the nursery planter. It's not like a real flower pot or anything, but it does have holes in the bottom, and it is sitting on wet, sort of gently running water. I need to change the filter out right now. You can see how we've slowed to just a trickle, but when the water is running fully, you can see how wet all this is over here. Water sort of drips in a little and gets it in there, and it's enough to keep everything moist and watered. The other plant that's in there is that creeping Jenny, and that is just looking fantastic. That's all this stuff down here, all this green stuff. It's hanging down into the water. It's growing up through my fern. It's really incorporating itself in there nicely. I'm hoping at some point we'll see it growing up on the sides or something. We can get rid of that ugly rubber corner. I've never been able to really do anything with this corner. That's kind of the purpose of this piece of wood right here, is to disguise this big ugly sort of rubber corner over there. So I don't know, we'll see. It's been like that for a long time now, and I've never done anything about it yet. So ideally, my arrowhead plant up here was supposed to cascade and trail down and cover that, but that never cascaded. That just grows in a light, dense, compact little bundle up there, and it just never seems to go anywhere. That should be a big, long, trailing plant that's covering this whole side here. That was the intention. Anyway, so all in all, Waterfall Tank and my foot tank are doing well. Just need to get in there and trim up some plants a little bit. And again, make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss the video. We're going to talk about that plant coming up here real soon. So let me get all these lights turned out for a minute so we can have a lot less glare on my other tanks as we make our way around the room. I have to watch where I step. The room is a mess. Again, this is very impromptu. My 29 miscellaneous. Don't think anything of interest is going on in here. As of last night, everything was ticking over smooth as a clock. Are clocks smooth? I don't know if that's an expression or not. I'm not sure where everybody's hiding. Again, the lights just came on a few minutes ago, so the fish are probably a little sketched out. My loaches are usually a little sketchy anyway when I walk up in front of the tank. It's not unusual not to see them, but the black skirt tetras in there, and I can see a few of them hiding back there in the leaves. They're usually a lot more out and about, but I don't see any floating. I don't see any on the bottom, and I don't see any stuck to the filter intake, so I'm going to assume they're all hiding back there underneath the plants because of the lights just coming on. So probably could get in here and do a little bit of maintenance, either top it off or do a little water change. I did do a water change and got the glass cleaned recently, so no need to worry about doing any heavy maintenance to it. Just pull a little water out, put a little fresh water in, and then of course change the filter pads, because as always with this tank, I've got water flowing through the middle there, backflowing, which indicates that either the biofilters or the filter pads themselves are clogged up and the water's not flowing freely enough. Just typical maintenance, nothing unusual going on in there. This tank, however, my 55-gallon Gourami tank, is a different story. We definitely need to get in here and do some work, and it is not for what you probably think when you're looking at this tank. And again, I'm going to say it again, I don't know why this comes out so purple on camera. It's got to have something to do with the camera sensors and the way it reads light or whatever, but to me that looks much more of sort of a rusty brown color and not that weird reddish purple color. But that's not my concern. I'm not really too worried about that. You can see the water level's a little bit low. It's down below that black plastic trim at the top. I don't like to see that gap there, so whenever the water's getting low like that, it's either time to top off or it's time to do a water change. And I lose so little water out of these 55s with the hoods on them that by the time the water starts getting low, I don't do a top off. I just go ahead and do a water change. So we do need to do a water change on it. I do need to wipe down the glass because you can probably see how much of that grungy stuff is actually on the glass and not just on the back wall. As far as it being on the rocks and the wood and all that, I don't mind that at all. I don't think it looks bad. Again, it's not purple like that. Don't you just get the idea out of your head that I have this weird purple fish tank, because it just does not look like that in real life. And if you look over here, you can actually see some flow lines from where one of the plecos or something was scraping on the back wall, back glass or whatever. So I need to get in there and do a water change. I need to wipe the glass down. It's probably due for a filter change, and more importantly, I need to get in and clean my filter intake. I had this problem in another tank that we'll get to when we get to it, but last night I noticed the water in this tank seemed to be really still, and I checked, and sure enough, while the water was flowing out of the spray bar, it was barely moving. I mean, the surface of the water had no movement at all. You just could not even see movement. If you looked really closely, like you see how you see this little thing sticking out of the hole, you could see a few little hair-like pieces of that were moving, so you could tell water was still flowing, but only in the technical sense, I'll put it that way. So what I did was I reached into the back and felt down at the intake, and sure enough, it was just all covered with this, actually, my Java window love. The little tiny babies break loose and they swirl around until they eventually get picked up by the filter, and they just sit there. And then another one lands and another one lands, and before you know it, my filter is packed with little baby Java fern and was not able to draw water through it. So once I scraped all that clean, instantly we got that, the water just started flowing again, because it hasn't been that long since I've done work on this filter. The filter itself is not clogged up or dirty. It was just that intake, and the water itself in this tank is fine too. It hasn't been that long since I've done some maintenance on this tank. So just a word of caution, in my case, I can't really see my filter intakes. I deliberately sort of hide them so that you don't see the plumbing in the tank so much, and as a result, out of sight, out of mind. It's just it's good to remember once in a while to get in there and make sure those filters intakes are still open and free. So moving on to my 55-gallon tank. Not much to speak of in here. We'll go over a few basic things, like I need to do some simple maintenance on this. I did a water change not long ago, but I didn't do much more than a simple water change and gravel vac. And when I say gravel vac, I mean a very superficial gravel vac. I just try to pick up the excess amounts of waste that we get from my pleco, and you can see now there's not even really that much in there. You can see a little bit here and there, but for the most part the bottom of the tank doesn't look that bad at all. So it hasn't been too long since I've been in here. Do need to get in there and start trimming my Anubias back. Again, I will remind you that this will be for sale when I trim it. I'm actually trying to wait. If anybody's interested in some larger pieces of Anubias, I will cut it when you need it or want it, and we can make arrangements. So my email's down below. I also sell all my other plants and stuff like that. So if you're interested in any aquatic plants, you can check out my email. And then if you want some big chunks of Anubias, and when I say big chunks, I mean, I'll be cutting a chunk of rhizome down here. You might get a 6 or 8 inch chunk of rhizome with whatever growth is already on the rhizome. And maybe we'll have to cut this chunk off too that's growing out this way, but I think we've got time. We can leave this one to grow a little bit more. Obviously I need to trim a few dead leaves and that sort of thing, but otherwise this tank's sort of ticking over, doing okay. I would like to get in there eventually. I know I've talked about this a bunch of times, but when I planted that anacris that I collected myself, some of it broke free from the bottom, has collected in the Anubias up there, and it's just been there ever since. I see it, but it's not hurting anything, so I just never even think about it, even though it would literally be simply opening the lid, sticking my hand in there and pulling it out, and I'd be done. And yet I still procrastinate and put it off. Don't ask me how my brain works. I don't know either. So that's about it. I will say that I noticed the other day my tetras were acting very spawny. I mean, they always sort of dash around and swim and compete, but they were going in and out of the Anubias quite a lot, and they were pairing off and dashing back and forth. Very much spawning behavior. So once again, let's all cross our fingers and hope I can get some little baby diamond tetras going in this tank, because these are just absolutely beautiful, amazing fish, and I'd love to be able to spread them around and put them in a few other tanks. And of course, I will always recommend them. If anybody wants diamond tetras or has been thinking about them, do it. Go for it. You will definitely not be disappointed. They are amazing. I got a bunch of them in here too. I'm almost wondering if I haven't had a few sort of grow up on me and I haven't even noticed. I'm adding to my numbers and I don't even realize they're doing it. All right, this is my 40 breeder, which was formerly my Black Ghost Knifefish tank, formerly my African tank. This is the tank that my Tenopoma and my now deceased Synodontis and all my old Congo Tetras, they all got their start in this tank as babies. And after about a year and a half, when they outgrew it, they moved over to the 125. And now, of course, the Tenopoma is the only fish that's left out of that original crew after I lost my Synodontis. This is another tank, though. As time has gone on, the tanks, occupants have evolved, but the scape and everything has not. The only evolution that's happened with the scape has been that it's just grown in. For example, the other day in a video I showed you how I was vacuuming the mulm and stuff out of all this area here. I deliberately have that area there as sort of a trap. I expected the mulm and stuff to settle in there, and then that would be a nice easy place for me to get my gravel vac in and remove it. And yet over all this time, all this growth has just developed. All this growth has just sort of developed. You can see how it's actually growing out of the wood, and the roots have actually borne down into the cracks of the wood, and it's sort of grown into this sort of small stunted Java fern. That's just regular old Java fern. There's nothing unusual about it at all. It's just grown into this really dwarf stunted version of it. Same with my Anubias. Believe it or not, that's all Anubias. This is a slightly larger piece. This is a piece of Anubias that I know is the same species as that Anubias. And yet, after all these years, it's only that big. And then that is Anubias, believe it or not. And this tank likewise looks more of a rusty brown and not that purple color. I don't get why we've got that purple color like that. It's more of a brown. And then all of this here is all sort of a mix of Java ferns and stuff. I think I've got some crypt in here. I've got a few different plants growing from way back in the day. But I set this tank up scape wise, you know, I got the woodwork in there the way I like it. I got the rocks in there the way I like it and everything. And I planted it, and I haven't done anything to it since. It's just stayed like that for years and years and years. This is my earliest sort of thought out designed tank. I had built other tanks prior to this, but they were just sort of, hey, let's go run up to the Walmart and grab a fish tank, and then I'll slap one together this afternoon. And I've done a lot of tanks like that, and they were all fun, and you know, they occupied my time for the day. But this one was the one that I really said, let's set up a tank that's going to look like something and be something, you know. And I thought about what fish I wanted in it, and I planned who was, you know, the occupants and everything. I planned the scape. You know, this was my first tank that was my African tank. I had African fish in there, and it was just great. So now it's come to this, and we probably need to get in there and do a little bit of plant removal and stuff. But this is another tank that my filter intake got really clogged and just stopped the other day. I did shoot a video yesterday. I'm not going to go back into that. I'll attach a card here if I think about it. You can check out or just look at my 40 breeder playlist, and you will see the video where the filter got clogged, stopped running, and then I just went ahead and cleared off the filter intake, pumped on the filter a few times, and got it flowing again before I even realized that, you know, that might have been some nasty, stinky, filthy water I dumped back into the tank. And it turns out it was not a big deal, but at the same time, I still did a big emergency water change and so on and so forth. So it's time to get in here and do a little more maintenance on this tank. It's been a little bit lax down here in the fish room as of late, being summertime and everything. But we'll get to it. We'll get on top of everything, get caught up again. Moving on to my New World tank. It's probably about time to start doing something with that water sprite that's growing out of the top there. It's getting a little on the bushy side. And as a result, it's making the tank a little darker than I like it. I don't mind having a sort of dark interior to the tank so the fish have a place to feel secure and comfortable and everything. But that looks a little weird. Oh no, look at this. You see that on the side of that silver dollar? I don't know what that even is. I'm going to have to wait for him to turn around before I can see that again. I don't know if that was some sort of fungal infection or some sort of injury. It almost looks like the skin has been rubbed raw or something. And he's not going to cooperate, is he? Alright, well, I am definitely going to have to start having a look at this fish and figuring out what's going on with that. Maybe even see if I can't get it out of the tank. And I don't really know. I think that's a little bit big to be putting in a 10-gallon quarantine tank, but we'll have to wait and see. So there you go. We've definitely got an issue going on with one of my silver dollars. I just don't know what the actual issue is. What is that? That's definitely not something introduced into the tank. It's not ick or, you know, anything that would have been a parasite that I brought in from the outside. So all I can think is maybe that it's an abrasion that is now getting a secondary infection. I've said before that this tank is my most heavily stocked. It's got the highest nutrient load. I often joke that that's not water, but soup that the fish are swimming around in. Tons of mulm and all that kind of stuff collect in here. And whenever you've got situations like that, you've got potential for secondary infections with you know, bacteria and stuff that develops in the tank, and then the fish gets a little scratch, or it's, you know, another fish nips at their fins or something, and they get these little open wounds on their fins, and then that opens them up to secondary infections. So we're going to start with some basics, just getting the big water change done on this tank. We'll get the filter cleaned out. I'll do as much gravel vacuuming as I can do in this tank, and then we'll try, you know, adding a little aquarium salt and the basic kind of stuff, and we'll see if we can't get that to clear up. I have had marks and injuries on fish like that before that really did just clear up when treated as though it was an abrasion rather than, and you know, like an attack or a what's the word I'm looking for here, a parasite or something. It's not necessarily an illness. It's possibly just an infection on a scrape. And, you know, the fish's own immune system will take care of it if I can get it into a clean enough environment. So that's going to be on today's list of priorities, to get this tank cleaned up and see if we can't get that spot figured out. All right. Well, moving on. Again, this isn't going to be a video about the fish, but about the whole fish room. This is the other thing I've been thinking about, as I was just starting to say when I noticed the injury on that fish, was that this is getting just a little too much. It's not even, you know, when you really get in here and look at it closely, you can see where the light's just pounded on it like that. It doesn't necessarily look all that great. We got some dead growth going on over here, and then even, well, that's looks pretty good actually when you look at how close to the light that is. I mean, it's physically touching the light, so that's some pretty thick stuff in there. I don't know. The very least I can do is get in there and thin that out. But that is Java Fern. I'm sorry, Water Sprite. Water Sprite develops this very different sort of characteristic look to it once it grows emergent. Once it's up and out of the water, it grows this very, very spindly, almost piney or lacy sort of look to it. And then even down here you can see where we're getting some dried up ends, a little bit of dead stuff going on. So that's probably something we need to address too. All right, everybody. Got my train of thought all rattled up. I'm a little disconcerted about that fish now. Nothing going on in the snail tank to speak of. My purple spotted gudgeon is no longer with us, so this is now my, well, it's going to be a sunfish tank. I've already talked about that. I don't want to spoil any other ideas I've got for this tank so far. I did actually post a short video over on my Patreon page for my few handful of patrons I've got over there. If you haven't been paying attention, I finally did post another video over there, and I posted a video talking about my plans for this tank. I've already come up with some pretty good ideas of what I want to do and how I want to set it up, and I've got a video about that over on Patreon, so you can go check that out if you're interested. I will say two things about this tank. One is I talked before about not knowing whether or not my little catfish had survived. I hadn't seen it in a little while. I did see it yesterday, so my little South American bumblebee catfish is a-okay. Now, I may also pull that fish out of there and relocate that to a different tank because, and I know a lot of you are going to be happy to hear this, I have decided that in addition to being a sunfish tank, the one thing I definitely want to make sure I have in this tank is at least one crayfish. I really, really like crayfish. They're really, really cool animals. They're fun to watch, and they make good video, and I know a lot of my viewers really, really enjoyed my crayfish. That was always a highlight of some of my tanks. So I do want to figure out a way to incorporate crayfish into this tank. It's going to be a native, pseudo-native tank, sunfish, maybe a few minnows, but definitely is going to have at least one crayfish in there. The issues arise about the fact that it's an open top tank, and I intend to keep it that way, and it's very difficult to keep crayfish, well, it's impossible to keep crayfish in an open top tank unless you make accommodations, and I've already got some ideas about how to do that. And again, I discussed those over in a video on my Patreon page. But if you don't want to watch that, make sure you're subscribed, and as time goes on, we will be getting in here and starting to work on this tank. I actually planned on going out today and looking for some wood that I need to put in here, so maybe we'll also be getting a video of me out on the kayak today, going out the reservoir and looking for some different woodwork to start working on this tank. So again, make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss any of that. Moving on to my 125, we'll sort of start at this end and kind of scroll our way down. My waterfall's in the tank, my waterfall's in the way right here. I can't get too close to the tank until we get here, and then we can step back and look at the whole thing. So as usual, it's about time to get in and do some basic maintenance on this. Nothing major, just need to do a water change. It is about time to get in and change the filter on this one again. And of course, the glass needs to be cleaned down. This is a tank that's got a lot of light in it, and I always get a lot of growth on the glass, especially at this end. It's got the double whammy of light from the inside, plus the LED from my waterfall tank shines on this tank down here, and this end gets a lot of growth on it from the light that comes from outside the tank. So need to do that. Need to get in here and trim back my lily pads, because they're, don't need all that. That's blocking my light, blocking gas exchange. Looks pretty cool once you open the tank up and look at them. So definitely need to get in and trim some of that out. Look at all the hair algae growing on the stems. See, I think that looks beautiful. I don't mind that at all. As long as it's not taking over the tank and overwhelming it and growing all over everything. I think some of that green flowing algae like that, it's probably a species known as maiden's hair, maiden's tresses, that's what it is. It's a Spirogyra is what it actually is, but it's also called maiden's tresses because it looks like beautiful flowing soft silky hair. I really do like it. Fish are all doing well. I did have a look in this tank and I did not notice any casualties. Everybody seemed to be doing okay. I don't see him now, but I did see my Tenopoma, and there he is. You can just about make him out down there hiding. And my snakeskin gourami is in there somewhere too. I know I saw that this morning. Here is one of my loaches. I think that's the bigger of them. And unfortunately my small loach, there's my snakeskin gourami. Unfortunately, my small loach, oh, that's both the loaches right there. The small one is just getting smaller and skinnier. I don't know what to do about it. I tried all sorts of different medications. I finally thought I had gotten on top of it. It seemed like it was doing better after I used the general cure, and yet it's now getting skinny again, so I really don't know what to do about that. Otherwise, everybody else is looking good. So moving on to my 20-gallon Angelfish tank. This tank is currently being treated with ChemiClean. Had a little bit of grunge and cyanobacteria growing in there. And you can kind of see how it's killing it off, but it's still got a little bit too much green coloration to it for me. And so we'll have to do a couple more days worth of treatment. That is my clown pleco that helps to keep this tank clean. And again, there's more of that rusty looking cyanobacteria that looks grapey purple in my camera for some reason. Really strange. So no big deal, nothing going on in the tank. It was just getting a little cruddy. This is one of those tanks where the cyanobacteria just keeps coming back to haunt me no matter what I do. And so from time to time, I just have to put a little ChemiClean in the tank, throw an air stone in there, give it a few days, and then do a water change, and we'll be good to go for a little while. Now, the last time I did this, the cyanobacteria came back pretty quickly. It was unusual how fast it started coating everything again. Normally, I get 6 months or something before I have to worry about it, and this time it was only a few. And so I'm wondering if maybe I didn't do a thorough enough treatment on the first time around, so we're going to try again. It's also possible, I suppose, if I treat the tank too frequently with it, that you might start developing some sort of resistance. You can see how it's just dead and starting to come off in sheets. So the ChemiClean, from what I've found in research, is a form of emycin. So it's some type of sort of antibiotic, sort of. Again, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it's a form of emycin. And if it's a form of emycin, I don't see why, if I keep treating the tank over and over and over again with this stuff, why wouldn't the tank, or why wouldn't the bacteria develop a resistance to what I keep treating it with? So that to me seems like it would be a possibility. And it just comes right off in sheets. So I just need to get in here at this point and do a water change with the vac, and then just get in there manually and just do just this. Just wipe these sheets of that crud off, and it leaves me with nice beautiful green plants again. And if I've got the gravel vac running while I'm doing that, I can just gravel vac it off rather than have to set it there for the time being. But we need to continue on with the video. I'm not going to get distracted by doing tank maintenance while we shoot and around the world, although I am going to do a little bit more because I see it sitting there and it's bugging me. All right, now we're going to move on once I get this off my finger. All right, stay tuned. We'll see what that looks like once I'm done getting it all cleaned up. Moving on to my brackish tank. Don't have the forward light turned on at the moment, so this is what the tank looks like to me all the time, and how Butterbean lives in it when I'm shooting video of it, or you know, I've got the camera in there, we're shooting the feeding videos, or we're doing video like this. I normally turn the forward light on, and that is a planted tank LED, and it gives the tank a really sort of harsh bluish kind of look, which I don't particularly care for, and I don't think Butterbean cares for it too much either, at least not initially. After a while he gets used to it. So that's about it. Still got the little sort of white spots and lesions on him. They seem to get worse and better randomly. I really don't have any idea what seems to have an impact on them, but you can see right now his belly is nice and bright white, and he's nice and happy. Normally their bellies will get a little gray when they get stressed out, but I find that Butterbean gets gray when he eats too. And I know he's not stressed out when he eats. He eats like a little piggy, and I'm sure that grayness is probably more than just stress. Or possibly not. We humans define stress in an unusual sort of way. We always tend to think of stress as being a bad thing, but happiness, joy, all that kind of stuff is stress as well. Stress just means changes going on. And so when you're really happy, like you got a lot of fun stuff happening, that's stress. That's a type of stress that's going on. So it's possible that the same thing's happening with him. You know, their bellies may change darker when they get stressed, but maybe we're thinking of the term stressed in the wrong way. And when he gets in there eating his food and stuff, he gets all excited and happy, and that's why his belly turns gray. But as you can see right now, it's nice and bright white. That's the way I like to see it. That lets me know he's at least comfortable. Nothing's bugging him too much. And that's about it. He's the only fish left in the tank. Did a water change not too long ago. Probably wouldn't hurt to do another one, but this tank is sort of notorious for getting very, very infrequent water changes. So we'll have to just play that by ear. But again, I'll say make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss it when I do finally get around to doing a water change on this tank. And that brings us all the way back to... just missed it. I was hoping to avoid having to put two files together, but we just went past my maximum file length, so this last couple of seconds is going to be tacked on to the other one. So there you go. We're back to my 29 miscellaneous. If you stayed with me all this time, I appreciate it. I know my videos are long-winded, but you know, that's what you get with my channel. You either like that or you don't, and if you don't, you probably don't watch my videos anymore. So thanks again. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, this is my 29 miscellaneous, and I will see you real soon in the next one.